Well, we're going to go back to the great topic, major theme of this summit, place-based innovation, major theme and imperative for our country in the National Commission of Innovation and Competitiveness Frontiers. And I'm delighted we have two leaders in this space in their own states, but also nationally, and I think internationally as well. So I'm going to introduce them. Sally Morton, who's the Executive Vice President for Knowledge Enterprise at Arizona State University. Many of you know that ASU has been ranked the most innovative college in the United States for 7 years by Forbes. So is it US News or Forbes? Which one? US News. And that's no surprise given its president, Michael Crow, who for many years was the vice chairman of the Council on Competitiveness, and Dan McCoy, who is the director of the Wyoming Outreach, Recreation, Tourism, and Hospitality Center. And we know, of course, that those sectors of activity are a huge part of the economy here, but also of the attractiveness of this state for people to come and visit, have their vacations, but also to preserve our great environment. So I'm going to start with you, Sally. You also oversee the entire research and development portfolio for ASU. So you have a very big job. And we know this is a stepping stone job because the new director of NSF had that job. You succeeded him. So it's very important. But let me ask you to start, we're talking about the future. Arizona is a state that has really transformed in the last 20 years, as well as the university, but Intel, the major companies that are there, the innovation, the entrepreneurship, many, many things. Can you share with us kind of what the recipe has been to where you have gotten to where you are today, and then a little bit about where you're headed in the future?
Sure. Well, thank you. I'm delighted to be here. We were asked to be evocative, provocative, and educational. And I always remember the advice I give speakers: be informational, if possible, humorous, and above all, brief. And in addition, there has been a work group on this topic. So I think Dan and I feel that we're hoping we can say something new. But I get asked that question often. I've been at Arizona State now for 1.5 years, and I get asked, what is the recipe? So I thought a bit about it. The first is, I think we have a very strong charter that drives our work, and I've written it here. I should probably know it by heart by now. I think I do. Let me just read the charter to you. ASU is a comprehensive public research university measured not by whom it excludes, but by whom it includes and their success. And I want to stop there. It's really important for us. We do not have a process of exclusion. We accept 3% of our students, and now it's 2% next year. And isn't that a wonderful, isn't that improvement? Instead, we think about including. We have 170,000 students at ASU. Half of them are online. We're trying to do quality education at scale. Our graduation rates have increased. We have many first-generation and Pell eligible students. We were just designated a Hispanic serving institution. So that's a very important part of our charter. I'll keep reading the charter. We're advancing research and discovery of public value, assuming fundamental responsibility for the economic, social, cultural, and overall health of the communities that we serve. So I think the charter, and in it is infused this idea of entrepreneurship and innovation. As you said kindly, this is 7 years running the most innovative university, as denoted by US News and World Report. So we start from there. We also have structure. I was interested in your remarks, President Seidel, about your work in Russia. We have transdisciplinary schools and colleges as well. Very few historical departments. There have been some holdouts. English apparently refused to be part of my husband's an English professor, but in any event, so we've had some holdouts, but that sort of pervades our charter and our structure. Then what have we done? We have 7 innovation zones at the university. So 7, so we have a multiplicity. We've sort of denoted in our structure a hub and spoke model. We are, of course, in Phoenix. which is a very large urban area in Arizona. In fact, most of the populace of Arizona is focused in Phoenix. So that allows us certain degrees of freedom that I think are not available here so much in Wyoming, though we are surrounded by rural areas and many tribal nations. There's actually 28 tribes in Arizona. We have teams in place in my area that do corporate engagement, economic and international development. The research institutes transdisciplinary are also within my group. We customize the building of these innovation zones in partnership with the communities in which they sit. So it's very much not a top-down, but both a bottoms-up as well as a top-down structuring of these innovation zones. We challenge ourselves to really embed innovation and entrepreneurship into our curriculum. We focus on an educational pipeline of lifelong learning from K through 12. We have charter schools that are run by ASU all the way through to sort of certificates and sort of lifelong learning. And we're particularly interested in decreasing the digital divide in our state in particular. And as I said, with respect to the tribal nations, it's a huge challenge there. So I think it's a combination of both having a charter that people resonate with, a structure within the university, and then a focus on social embeddedness in the communities that we serve. That's resulted in the successes that we have had. What's the future? Well, an 8th innovation zone on the horizon. I also wanted to raise the issue of, this is about the future of place-based innovation. And place-based says geographies. We have to be in the same place. I think the future is not actually about that. It's about partnerships like yours with Cardiff. It's about thinking about geography much more broadly. I'm a statistician, and in statistics, there's a concept of what's called borrowing strength. So I served on a National Academy of Sciences panel that was trying to estimate poverty for school districts. This is an important measure to estimate because it is on the basis by which Title I funding is given out. This is the funding that funds school lunches, for example. Huge amount, billions of dollars are given out based on these measures. So you want to estimate them accurately. The challenge is that some school districts are too small to derive an accurate measure. You need not just the number of children that are below the poverty level, but the percent of children that are below the poverty level. And proportions are notoriously hard to estimate. You have a numerator and a denominator, and they're both hard to estimate. So there's a statistical methodology by which you borrow strength from school districts that are larger and are similar to the school district that is too small. That could be a school district that is close by. It could be one that is just similar due to some other characteristics. I think we have to unlearn what we've learned, to use Tony Aquila's statement, and really think beyond geographical boundedness. However, the challenge there is you want to work with the community in which you're placing this innovation zone. So you have to also partner with them in a way that works for them. And I think your example of Cardiff was really an excellent example of how to do that locally here in Wyoming. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Sally. And I'm going to come back and ask you a few thoughts about what has been the magic in the greater Phoenix, Arizona area. I mean, it is the Sun Belt. It attracts people, you know, who are both retiring, but increasingly it's a place where companies want to be. I mean, you've had supportive government policy at the city and the state level, and that all feeds in. So I'll come back to that. Dan, I think you're going to share a little presentation with us, which we're all looking forward to. So maybe we'll start with that.
Yeah, that would be great. And I think this feeds in really well because we're talking about place. And I really want to kind of ground us in the future of place-based innovation in Wyoming. And just a little bit about, you've heard from President Seidel. This was the Wyoming Outdoor Recreation, Tourism, and Hospitality Initiative. It was actually something that originated from faculty at the university, including myself, as a partnership with the Haub School of Environment and Natural Resources and the College of Business. I'm really fortunate to have President Seidel sign off on this and be really excited about this and elevate this to one of 3 new initiatives at the university. And ultimately what we're seeking to do here is to expand and diversify Wyoming's economy through outdoor recreation, tourism, and hospitality. And we're going to do that through 3 different ways, or we're doing that in 3 different ways. Launching and developing new educational products to serve our workforce, expand outreach and extension throughout the state, and also to provide applied research to serve these industries throughout the state. So I know you guys have heard the population thing, so I won't mention that again. But one thing you probably haven't heard is that Wyoming has 50% of our land, or approximately, is public land in Wyoming. And that's iconic national parks like Yellowstone or Grand Teton or Devil's Tower. We've got America's first national forest and many other national forests in the state. Bureau of Land Management, state lands, state parks. I mean, really some outstanding assets throughout the state. Tourism, supplies, the largest single sector of employment in the state. It's the 2nd largest economic driver in the state, generating $4.2 billion in direct spending, and that was in 2021. Outdoor recreation, just to contextualize it a little bit, is 3.4% of our GDP. And that might not sound like a lot, but that places us in the top 5 in the country for its economic importance of outdoor recreation in the state. Another thing I just want to kind of throw out there, you might have heard this in small working groups, but or a family receives approximately $27,000 in benefits, and yet pays only about $3,000 to $3,500 in taxes. There's some structural problems, and I want to just kind of contextualize some of the other structural problems, because this leads into my final thing that I want to mention here. But President Seidel has mentioned this multiple times. We have a brain drain going on. 70% of our graduates leave the state. We've lost 6% of our millennials, 11.4% of our wage earners since 2008. As you've heard repeatedly throughout this conference, is that mineral and energies and energy industry. I mean, that's our top performing in terms of our economy. But as Dave Friedenthal said, we're at the end of the whip, and every time prices go up, we're building great new buildings, and President Seidel comes in to run the university, and immediately has to initiate a $50 million cut. So we've really been kind of gone up and down there. And I know remote workers. Many of you have mentioned the opportunity around remote work. However, that would actually, every remote worker that would come to Wyoming would actually cost us about $23,000. If you throw in a child that's in the K-12 system, that's another $17,000 per child. So please don't come and remote work in Wyoming. Thank you. So let me just pivot really quickly to talk about a study that I think that is just really fascinating. It's a place value. It's by community builders. They surveyed 1,000 business owners and residents all over the Rocky Mountain region, and found actually it wasn't that people brought businesses to this region. They actually were there in these places that they valued and loved, and built their businesses because they wanted to stay and be in those communities. And what was it about the communities? Well, it's the quality of the communities that kept people like, how do I stay in this place? How do I keep my family here? How do I raise my family here? That's the top thing. And businesses want to be able to attract and retain those people to those places. And please don't take this to heart too much, employers or universities, but we're willing to sacrifice salary as employees for ideal communities. So and that's pretty fascinating findings. So what is our opportunity here in Wyoming? Well, we have to address the state's structural issues, and that's really up to our state's leaders. But One of the things, I mean, because tourism is really kind of at the heart of what's important to me, is responsibly developing and maintaining these high value tourism assets that mutually benefit livability and the business environment. And let me just touch on one in outdoor recreation. I know that there's several of you who are in the venture capital kind of groups here. One of the groups that's done some really outstanding work is Quantified Ventures. This is the Bailey's Trail System in Appalachian, Ohio, just outside of Athens. 88 miles of trail, $10 million in VC investment. But look at those numbers. So those of you who are in the VC business, I mean, talk about the potential for revenue coming back to those investors, but also the health, social, and environmental benefits that come from having these trails. That just a small example of it. 80-mile trail system that connects communities. I mean, it's fantastic. And that they're going to be in the midst of building this entire trail system out, and it's going to be driving massive economic benefits. And I just want to end by saying that we're doing this same exact thing here in a partnership with the University of Wyoming. It's something called the Pilot Hill Project. And I encourage you all, after sitting 2 days in a conference center, to go out. It's just immediately east of here. We've already built out 10 miles of trail on it, but it's 5,500 acres that connects Laramie to 55,000 acres of national forest land directly, that we're going to be building 42 miles of trails on. The land swap is already complete with great help from the university to make that happen. And this is the type of investment that's going to pay significant dividends to communities, to make places where people want to move, create innovation, and really drive that innovation, and keep the young folks here who want to be in places that have these assets and these opportunities for them. So that's it.
Thank you. And, you know, focusing on tourism as a competitive economic cluster and all the other benefits that you've articulated is something that we're seeing a lot of innovation around the world. And I'll just mention, because I think some of you are maybe coming and others who are interested, let me know. But, you know, we have the Global Federation of Competitiveness Councils that I lead, that's chaired by our former chairman, Chad Holliday, who was CEO of DuPont and chairman of Bank of America. And this year we move around the world. Our meeting is going to be in Athens, and the theme is going to be from local to global, and place-based innovation is a big part of the discussion. And tourism is the main export earner for Greece. And anybody who's going there this summer can just plan to spend a fortune. There's no airplane. I mean, it's just gone crazy. But they have a whole strategy to significantly upgrade it in a very sustainable way. And what they're building into it is all the sustainability and resiliency of communities. And so I'd like us to think about place-based innovation as a driver also for sustainability of communities and how people live. Because the metric of 70% leaving from this state, when it's an incredible state, there are obviously reasons there are leaving. And then, you know, there's the goal of the pathway back. But ASU in Arizona now get tremendous metrics on sustainability, both from a research, but also from an implementation. So Dan, maybe I'll start with you since it's the tourism, but you have a lot of tourism in your state too. So let's talk about that in the context of sustainability writ large, not just environmental sustainability.
Certainly. And you know, I want to maybe just preface this by saying that, you know, tourism is certainly not a panacea for all things that could be fixed through tourism. A great example of that right now is up in Teton County, where Jackson Hole is. They're experiencing kind of the crushing effects of over-tourism, and it's really negatively impacting the perceptions and how the residents are kind of experiencing it. There are included with that environmental concerns and others. So there's social, environmental, and other concerns that come from that tourism. However, they're working on developing, just as a small example, they're working on developing a sustainable tourism management plan rather than just promoting our lodging tax the way it's structured. We don't need to get in the details of it, but the bottom line is it pretty much can only be used for promotion. And that doesn't really lend itself well to a place that already has a ton of visitation that doesn't necessarily want much more visitation. I think moving into that management space rather than just purely marketing space can kind of ameliorate some of those issues that come in and around sustainability from a variety of factors that come from tourism. So,
Sally.
Well, I want to take sustainability from a different direction if I could. I mean, obviously, environmental sustainability, terribly important to us. In Arizona, we've got water challenges, obviously heat. It was about 115 degrees there last week. And as we think at the university, obviously a lot of research in those areas, but I want to think about sustainability with respect to perhaps the National Science Foundation's engines opportunity, which we heard about yesterday in detail. I think the hope is there that after 10 years of support by NSF for the larger tier 2 projects, they would be sustainable in the communities in which those ecosystems are supported. And I see nodding heads. That's actually a pretty big challenge. We're thinking about it with respect to microelectronics and the CHIPS Act. Phoenix has gotten known now as Microelectronics Central. We've had TSMC and Intel are building 3 fabs together, 2 by Intel and 1 by TSMC. And obviously that's bringing a lot of other business to us. With the CHIPS Act, if the national network is funded, the question is going to be there after 5 years of funding, how would one sustain those types of fabrication facilities and fab to lab facilities that are hoped to be built? And that's a real challenge. I think the financing of the innovation, which is something that has been touched upon in several sessions here, remains an open challenge for us.
That's, yes, I agree. And, you know, the sustainability agenda that encompasses, you know, the transformation of food, you obviously mentioned water, energy is part of it, but it's also sustainability of people to have what's increasingly called a thriving life. And I would just suggest that if everyone take a look at the poll that recently has come out by Gallup. You know, they have more data on what people think and feel and know everywhere in the world. And their latest poll across the world on happiness, thriving is the lowest that's ever been. And that's a sustainability issue because people that don't feel that they're part of and they have a future, they don't want to contribute to the place-based innovation.
I would also just bring up sustainability of education. So it's not just young people graduating from college, but how do we provide lifelong learning for people? So, excuse me, people that may want to change careers, how can we provide training for them? So that's one thing we think about pretty deeply at the university in partnership with community colleges as well, how for people to raise the income for their families if later in life they want to change careers, and how do you provide that in an easy way that's accessible to people?
Dan, back to you.
I would just maybe touch on kind of the finance piece, because a lot of this tourism development stuff in terms of providing mutual benefits to local communities and to and also for tourism assets, it costs a lot of money, not only to develop and to maintain and to make sure that they're in a sustainable place. And we need to have mechanisms in place to kind of support that infrastructure going forward for sure. So, and that's a sustainability piece. Yeah.
And, you know, another component, we don't have time to talk about it really here, is these issues around equity and diversity in place-based innovation and tourism too. You know, I've heard people say, oh, you know, we ruined the cruise industry because now all these people come with their families and blah, blah, blah. And I've replied, that's the democratization of travel. The United States led that. It was an incredible contribution that, you know, in the 30s and even through the 60s, only very wealthy people could ever go on a cruise. Now almost everyone can. And to me, that's a great example of the democratization of tourism that adds value to people's lives and communities. So last comment or question, really. I know you work closely with University of Arizona as well, and the research enterprise in the state. What really is the biggest challenge right now in the innovation space in Arizona? You have a great supportive government across administrations.
I would say the biggest challenge actually we're facing is people. Retention and recruitment across the university, and also just to gain people. We're very fortunate to be part of what's called the New Economy Initiative in Arizona, in which all 3 state public universities, University of Arizona, Northern Arizona University, and ASU, have been given monies by the state government. We received $54 million last year. We cannot hire faculty fast enough to fill those positions, and we are losing people to industry in particular. Trying to retain sort of the altruistic nature of the academic setting is not as attractive so much. People are being allowed to work remotely. We can't always do that with all our jobs at the university. And so for me, the biggest challenge every day is people. People are our only currency: recruiting, retaining, developing people.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would say that the hospitality sector has just been really devastated in terms of its ability to kind of perform its functions and to be able to meet the service level and expectation that many of you maybe last night didn't get your rooms cleaned for today because there's a massive shortage of employees, and that's a major factor right now.
Well, going forward, and I'll talk about this in the close today, this whole topic, challenge of place-based innovation, is going to be a major focus of the work of the National Commission, as I've said many times. But we also want to co-create a really future-oriented toolkit and almost, compendium of the best practices in the United States, but also looking outside the world as well. And one thing I do want to say about ASU, you have formed, and of course, Ed mentioned it today and others, very important global partnerships where we learn as much as we give. And I think that's very important. In Brazil, I don't know if you remember, we created some years ago a project with SkySong in Arizona, where startup companies from Sao Paulo and Brazil would come and incubate in Phoenix at ASU, and you would send companies down, particularly in the energy and food space, and incubate. And then all the cross venture capital occurred, and a lot of businesses were created out of that. And so those are really exciting opportunities as well to connect globally as well as locally. So thank you all.